Jesus rebuked the religious leaders of his time for their failure to recognize his first coming. He said, "You know how to look in the sky and predict the weather, but you don't know how to recognize the signs of the times." Was Jesus just talking to the religious teachers of his day? I don't think so. I think he had a second audience in mind. Who? You and me. Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy, and today we're going to talk about this concept of recognizing the signs, of understanding the times in which we live. So we're going to start out, we're going to look at this passage from the book of Matthew, chapter 16, verses 1 through 3. It says, "One day the Pharisees and Sadducees came to test Jesus, demanding that he show them a miraculous sign from heaven to prove his authority. He replied, 'You know the saying, red sky at night means fair weather tomorrow. Red sky in the morning means foul weather all day. You know how to interpret the weather signs in the sky, but you don't know how to interpret the signs of the times.'" So what did Jesus mean by this? Well, he knew that the religious leaders of his time had studied the Scriptures, and the prophets had foretold that the Messiah would come during the exact time frame that Jesus appeared. In the book of Daniel, it says that 483 years will pass from the time the command is given to rebuild Jerusalem until the Messiah appears. So they knew that they were in that time frame and the Messiah should be appearing. Messianic fever swept through Jerusalem at that time. We know from the book of John, when John the Baptist was preaching, the religious teachers came to him and they said, "Are you Elijah?" Right? And why did they ask that? They asked that because Malachi had prophesied that Elijah the prophet would come before, he would precede the coming of the Messiah, right? And so they asked him that question. Then they asked, "Are you the Messiah?" Again, why were they asking this question? They were asking these questions because they knew the times in which they lived. They had studied the Scriptures. They knew that the Messiah was predicted to arrive at that time. But they failed to recognize Jesus as that Messiah. So what he is saying here in Matthew is, you can look up in the sky and you can interpret the signs, but can't you read the Scriptures and know who I am? Now contrast that with John the Baptist, who said, "Are you the one to come, or are we to expect someone else?" And when Jesus gave his reply based on Scripture, John the Baptist, that was the end for him. He knew Jesus was the one. But the religious teachers, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, they couldn't recognize that. So, why is this important, and what does this have to do with us? This has to do with us, as just as Jesus told the religious leaders of his time that they were to recognize the signs of their times for his first coming, the Messiah is predicted to come again. We know that Jesus will return again. So he expects us to recognize those signs as well. And in fact, he commanded us to watch for them. So let's come here and look at Mark 13, verses 34 through 37. It says, this is Jesus. He says, "The coming of the Son of Man can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. When he left home, he gave each of his slaves instructions about the work they were to do, and he told the gatekeeper to watch for his return. 'You too must keep watch, for you don't know when the master of the household will return, in the evening, at midnight, before dawn, or at daybreak. Don't let him find you sleeping when he arrives without warning. I say to you what I say to everyone, watch for him.'" Now, here Jesus is commanding over and over, watch. Watch for the return of the master. Watch for his return. And of course, that begs the question, watch for what? What are we supposed to be looking for? Well, what we're supposed to be looking for are the signs Jesus and the prophets said to look for. And so we've been over those signs in another video, several other videos, frankly. It goes well beyond the scope of the time we have here to discuss all of them. But so go back and look at past videos if you want to see what those signs are. But again, Jesus says to watch for those signs, right? We're to watch for those signs. And he also says in Matthew 24, understand this, if a homeowner knew exactly when a burglar was coming, he would keep watch and not permit his house to be broken into. You also must be ready all the time, for the Son of Man will come when least expected. So this is telling us why to watch. We need to remain awake. We need to remain alert. Otherwise, you're like someone who knows when a burglar is coming and you're not. You need to wait up and watch if you know that that's going to happen. And notice here he says, for the Son of Man will come when least expected. Last week, in a video called Peter's Prophecy, we talked about Peter's prophecy that in the end times, people will say, where is Jesus? You've been saying Jesus is coming back over and over again, year after year, and yet things are the same as they've always been, right? Which, of course, is patently false. But if you see today, that's what people actually say, especially within the Christian church itself. You'll hear Christians say, oh, Jesus isn't coming back. People have been saying so. They are least expecting him right now. Strangely, even with all the signs, all the turmoil in the world, they are least expectant of his return right now. Now let's see what Paul says. Paul says in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 2, for you know quite well that the day of the Lord's return will come unexpectedly, like a thief in the night. So a lot of people, they point to this, oh, a thief in the night is how Jesus is going to return. Therefore, we can't watch for signs. We can't know when he's coming. And while Jesus says we can't know the day or the hour of his return, he does say that we can expect the season because he gave us those signs to look for. Again, what would we be watching for if there were no signs? And of course, if we read on with what Paul writes to the Thessalonians, a few verses later in verses 4 through 6, he says, but you aren't in the dark about these things, dear brothers and sisters, and you won't be surprised when the day of the Lord comes like a thief. For you are all children of the light and of the day. We don't belong to darkness and night, so be on your guard, not asleep like the others. Stay alert and be clear-headed. So what he is saying here is he is saying if you are watching, if you are following Jesus' command to watch for the signs, and you are alert and awake and watchful, then the day of the Lord's return will not catch you unaware and unexpectedly like a thief in the night. So, again, let's go on and see what Jesus has to say, where he warns us again in Mark chapter 13, verses 28 through 29. He says, now learn a lesson from the fig tree. And this will tell us, again, when we should expect his return. Because he did say nobody knows the day or the hour, but he clearly tells us we can know the general time frame. And here he says that. He says, now learn a lesson from the fig tree. When its branches bud and its leaves begin to sprout, you know that summer is near. In the same way, when you see all these things taking place, you can know that his return is very near, right at the door. So what is Jesus saying? Well, just as he told the Pharisees and the Sadducees, you can look in the sky and predict the weather. He's telling us here, you can look at a fig tree and know that when it begins to bud, that it's going to soon bear fruit, that its summer is arriving. And likewise, he's saying, when you see these signs that I've discussed, that I've told you about, that the prophets have told you about, you can know that my return is very near, right at the door. So we can know the season of the Lord's return. Now, for those who say we can, again, the disciples came to Jesus and they said, what are the signs of your coming and the sign that you will establish your kingdom and reign? And he did not tell them there are no signs. He didn't say, I rebuke you for even asking for the signs. Nobody knows the time of my arrival or can know anything like that. He didn't do any of those things. In fact, he went on and he listed those signs. And here he's telling us that when you see all those signs coming together, you can know his return is very near, right at the door. We see that again in Luke chapter 21, verse 28, where he says, when you see all these things take place, look up, your salvation draws near. So what Jesus is saying is when you see these signs start to converge and come together, and all take place at once, like we're seeing in our day and time, you should recognize the signs of the times. You should not be like the Pharisees and the Sadducees who understood the Scriptures but did not recognize the signs of the times. We should be recognizing the signs of our times, that Jesus, the season of his return, is near. Now, why should we do this? I'll leave you with this. Matthew 24, verses 45 through 51. This is Jesus saying, "A faithful, sensible servant is one whom the master can give the responsibility of managing his other household servants and feeding them. If the master returns and finds that the servant has done a good job, there will be a reward. I tell you the truth, the master will put that servant in charge of all he owns. But what if the servant is evil and thinks, 'My master won't be back for a while,' and he begins beating the other servants, partying, and getting drunk? The master will return unannounced and unexpected, and he will cut the servant to pieces and assign him a place with the hypocrites. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." So here Jesus is saying, I, the master, have left for a time. You don't know when I'm going to return, but I've given you responsibilities. I've given you work to do. And for each of us, that work, that's based on your personal relationship with God. That's based on the talents he's given you. But we each have work that we should be doing right up until the time that Jesus returns. So will he find you doing that work when he returns? If he returned today, would he find you a faithful and sensible servant? Leave your answer in the comments below. Let me know. If not, why? Why aren't you doing the work that Jesus commanded you to do, that he expects you to do? Wouldn't you want to hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant"? So guys, all of this shows we live in the season of the Lord's return. We need to understand these times in which we live, because we live in the time where Jesus is coming back, and that is our great hope. That is our great joy. Jesus is coming. So like and share this video, and God willing, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to sign up for my free monthly newsletter and get your copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Just follow the link in the description to get your free book. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.